Hello. There are a lot of books and videos on the God question. It's a question that's been around for a very long time, thousands of years perhaps, and I'd just like to get in my tuppence worth through the medium of video. The question in a nutshell is, does God exist? If we want to elaborate on that a little bit more, we would say, is there any being in charge of the universe, in charge of the whole cosmos? Is there any purpose to the universe as we see it? Does it have a meaning? And we might wonder if somehow human beings are special in the cosmos, and this being takes a special interest in human beings. So that's the God question, and I would like to try and answer it. So in a nutshell, my answer would be no, he doesn't exist. But we'll elaborate on that a little bit more, and so we would say that all these stories about God, gods, and all the different names that this character has down the centuries, they're all basically fictions. They're all tales from ancient civilization. Here is a collection of tales from the Middle East. Tales from the Arabian Nights is a very old text, just like the Bible, but it has no pretensions of being anything other than a bunch of yarns. In the stories we find Sinbad, for example, has an encounter with a giant bird which he persuades to carry him and his hoard of diamonds out of the valley. It's just a yarn. Nobody's in any doubt about that. So why don't we face up to the fact that our tales in the Bible are out of the same stable and they belong on the same shelf in the bookshop. So I would say that the God question resolves itself quite quickly into a question about ancient tales of spirits in the sky. That's really what it is. Now, of course, the tales come down to us, and through the machinery of religion they are brushed up and dressed up and made to look much more interesting than they really are. David Hume pretty well said this a couple of hundred years ago in The Natural History of Religion. He suggested then that these ancient tales come from earlier civilizations than our own, and that they may be interesting, they may be good fun, but their chances of being true are very small. That is a portrait of David Hume, the Scottish philosopher of the 18th century. He's quite a remarkable man because he raised all these objections to the Bible, just as I have been doing in this video, many years ago, when it was quite a dangerous thing to do. He was standing up to religious orthodoxy and criticising things that people felt should not be discussed, should not be looked at analytically the way he was doing. He attacks the whole idea of miracles, that these wonderful events are supposed to have occurred in the past and people tell tales about them and we are supposed to believe them. He attacks that whole idea. That's in his book, An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding. In chapter 10 he examines miracles, finds them wanting. He also has a few sharp words to say about the Bible itself. I'll just read you what he says about the Bible. Upon reading this book we find it full of prodigies and miracles. It gives an account of a state of the world and of human nature entirely different from the present, of our fall from that state, of the age of man extended to near 1,000 years, of the destruction of the world by a deluge, of the arbitrary choice of one people as the favourites of heaven, and those people the countrymen of the author, of their deliverance from bondage by prodigies the most astonishing imaginable. I desire anyone to lay his hand upon his heart and after a serious consideration declare whether he thinks that the falsehood of such a book, supported by such a testimony, would be more extraordinary and miraculous than all the miracles it relates. So Hume is here inviting us to use our common sense and our common experience of the world to stand up to stories of miraculous events and wonderful prodigies from the past. He's encouraging us to keep hold of what we know and use our experience to test these ancient tales, which he thinks are generally found wanting. I do recommend David Hume, The Natural History of Religion. Do I idolise Hume now? Not at all. He was fallible, and I don't agree with everything he ever wrote. But I give credit where credit is due. He did present compelling arguments against belief in miracles and against belief in sacred texts of whatever kind. He was a philosopher and his arguments are sound. That's what I give him credit for. So, in conclusion, does it matter? Maybe we can just let people get on with their lives and enjoy their holy texts if that's what they find pleasure in. Well, I wish it was as simple as that. Unfortunately, it isn't. The ancient texts feature as part of religions which are essentially divisive. They divide humankind up into separate camps with their belief systems and their holy books. Muslims, Christians, Jews, Hindus, etc. And basically, humankind cannot afford to be divided when it is facing real problems. We have real problems of pollution, overpopulation, and biggest of all, of course, the threat of climate chaos. These are real problems, and we need to face them as one humanity trying to find practical solutions to real problems. Carrying a lot of baggage of ancient beliefs, which are basically out of date and not much use to us, is not going to help us in that situation and can actually get in the way and impede our progress. I shall return to the whole question of religion and morality in the next video. But for now, I think I've said enough on the God question. As far as I'm concerned, the answer is quite clear. I hope you agree. You're welcome to leave comments at the bottom of the video. Good luck.